Welcome, folks. I'm Jaby, Koay, joined by ACHARA, KIRK.
Hi.
We're talking about Spider-Man No Way Freaking Home. We're going to do a spoiler live stream with you guys probably tomorrow, so keep a lookout for that, where we'll answer all your questions and talk about that in depth. But this is just our feelings about the film, and there will be spoilers galore in this discussion. We're probably not going to hit every single thing, but that's the point of the live stream tomorrow. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and keep a lookout for that. Okay, so starring, who is it starring?
It's starring Tom Holland and Zendaya.
Yes.
And Jacob Batalon.
And a few other folks.
And Benedict Cumberbatch.
So this is your chance to walk away. If you haven't seen the film yet, please watch it and come back to this video. We watched the film 3 times. We watched it with a smaller group, with a proper large group, and then
opening night group. Yeah. Super fun.
And then we watched it in IMAX at 6 a.m., which was a very, very interesting experiment because it really showed you what scenes were still exciting even at that early hour, where you could feel the excitement of people during certain moments, and it's like, okay, even that.
This movie is a fantastic experience with an audience. It's like one of those that you really ought to watch with a huge crowd, because it makes all the difference in the world.
Having watched the film 3 times, it really tells you what you like and don't like, and all 3 instances that I've watched this film, I actually had tears in my eyes because of the same stuff. You know, there were certain moments that struck me emotionally more, but Andrew Garfield got me every single time.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I feel like he is one of my favorite Spider-Mans, even though the movies that he was in were not my favorite Spider-Man movies.
So there were certain issues I saw from the very first viewing, and those issues became more and more prevalent with each subsequent viewing. But there were certain things that still resonated as like fun and exciting and positive, even after the 3rd showing. The fan service in this film was very, very strong. When you're bringing together these people, it's kind of surreal to see these villains from the earlier installments of Spider-Man in this one, and they're all in the same room. It's a weird, like, psychedelic trip in a way.
Not as weird as seeing all 3 Spider-Men together in the same room.
Right, well, that too. I really enjoyed all of that, because it's like, what a time to be alive, man.
I know.
To be able to see all these things come together, to see Alfred Molina and Willem Dafoe in the same room as Tom Holland, to see Tom Holland fighting Willem Dafoe. Like, all of those things are super cool. Seeing Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland talk to each other in the pointing scene. Like, all that stuff was super cool to just see the combination of these elements together.
And to see them fighting together.
Yeah.
There was something just, it kind of just made your heart swell when they all swung into frame together, and like they land, the iconic Spider-Man landing, and they're all there, all 3 of them. It's just like, oh my God!
Not too many people are going to talk about this, but I really appreciated the music in the film. There isn't like a motif or a particular, theme song in the film that stands out to me, but just the collection of sounds in the soundtrack or score, I thought was actually really nice.
Yeah, it like complemented the story really well without overpowering any scenes.
Right. The acting in the film, I would say Andrew Garfield is a standout for me. Like, he's my favorite by far. Tom Holland, I thought, did a great job of carrying the movie. Like, this is a huge undertaking. You got to think about the fact that he's a really young guy carrying this billion-dollar blockbuster franchise. That's a lot of pressure. And I thought that he did a really good job of handling this. You know,
he's a good actor.
He's a very good actor.
Yeah.
And I thought that Zendaya complimented him very, very well as MJ. MJ's character never really stood out to me in the previous Spider-Man films.
Oh, no?
Like, and I mean, with Tom Holland, she's just there. It's like,
really? I always really enjoyed her. Like, I just enjoyed her take on MJ, because she wasn't this kind of like super sweet person. I liked the edge that she was bringing to the character and the sarcasm and stuff. Like, I really enjoyed her.
Yeah, like, I can't think of any MJ moments from the previous Tom Holland Spider-Man films where I'm like, oh yeah, that was fun. Like, there's nothing that like resonates with me. Whereas here, I thought that she had a lot of good moments. And Benedict Cumberbatch, I'm always happy to see him. I'm always happy to see Doctor Strange. Any opportunity to spend time with Doctor Strange. There's obviously the after credits scene in this film, which is a trailer for the next Doctor Strange film. And that got me so pumped. I'm like, if nothing else, it was worth it for that. That Doctor Strange preview just like made my day.
Yeah.
The weird stuff in terms of acting was Jamie Foxx for me. Even though there was a lot of good zingers from him.
Yeah.
It just felt like Jamie Foxx as opposed to the character that he developed in Amazing Spider-Man 2.
We just watched that recently, and so it's very fresh in our minds, but he really did feel like a different person, you know, because that character in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 was like really nerdy. He was very specific with his acting choices, and here he was a lot more bombastic, and he was like the cool guy. It was a little bit confusing. They did call it out right away to kind of be like, oh yeah, you're different or something. But why? Just because he ended up in a new universe, you just get a makeover and your personality changes? Like,
Willem Dafoe, man, like,
my God.
He was just so amazing in terms of just being Green Goblin again. Like, I thought I liked him more here than I did in the original Spider-Man film. I thought he was so good.
We have this expectation that with villains, especially with Marvel villains, they're supposed to have layers. They're supposed to be maybe kind of sympathetic, and we can kind of get on board with them, but we know that they're a villain. And so he really played with that very well, and he is a formidable actor, and so you know, he was bringing all of his acting chops to this, and it was fantastic.
Just to be clear, I liked Willem Dafoe a lot in the original Spider-Man film. I just thought this elevated it even further.
Yeah,
you know, him as that really, really dark villain who's just psychotic.
Yeah,
Alfred Molina, of course, did a great job.
Yes.
I really liked his switch more than anything, because he goes from being a villain to being basically a good guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think those two characters, Green Goblin and Doc Ock, they have that potential, and that is inbuilt in the characters, you know, because it is that kind of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type thing where they're fighting with the forces within themselves, and they're both really great actors, and they both pulled it off really, really well. I would say for me, I enjoyed the film, but the moments where like I perked up the most, it began right when Andrew Garfield walks through that portal, and it's like, whoa, everybody in the movie theater, and like, it's so much fun watching that moment. And like, you know, the first time you watch it and the feeling you get when he starts coming out, and you're like, wait, is this the moment? Like, I'm getting goosebumps just kind of remembering, right? But then to watch people watching that for the first time as well and losing their damn minds is amazing. But yeah, like from there, when the two other Spider-Men start making their way into the movie, that's the moment when I feel like the movie really picks up, and it like
absolutely
builds up steam and starts getting really, really exciting.
Well, it's just undeniable fun to see them all together.
Yeah.
The way that they did the final action sequence, I have to applaud, because that's very complicated to even think about. Like, how do you pull off making this thing fun and engaging and not completely losing the audience? Admittedly, I did get confused sometimes which Spider-Man was flying around. Yeah. But the thing is, it was done in such a way that emotionally it was strong, action-wise it was strong. I just wanted more of it, you know. I think that because it was so much fun. It was so much fun to spend time with the three of them, and the dialogue, the banter between the three of them. You know what I mean?
And it's like, what would it be like? How would you use the strengths of Spider-Man to achieve this goal of, you know, curing all of the bad guys up there on the Statue of Liberty, and they're like flying around and passing things off to each other and moving in the way that they move. It was really cool what they did.
Even though not a whole lot was happening, I liked that moment when they were trying to come up with the solutions to cure the bad guys. When you're seeing all three of them together, it's just so surreal.
It is.
I think my favorite moment in the entire film, again, goes back to Andrew Garfield, which is when he rescues MJ.
Yes. Oh my God. That moment was so cool.
There's just the emotional vulnerability of Andrew Garfield's character in this movie that you don't really see in anybody else. It's not that no other characters get emotional in the film. Obviously, Tom Holland gets emotional, and you see him crying and whatnot, and of course, Marissa Tomei, or Aunt May. But there's something in his expressions where he is just constantly dealing with the death of Gwen. And he's constantly reliving that moment, and he's angry. And he even talks, like in the dialogue, he even says, you know, I've become rageful, and I don't want to see you become like me.
I feel like a lot of the time Andrew Garfield like inadvertently stole the show. He stole the scene, because he is so good. And I did love all of those moments that you were saying where he had that emotional vulnerability, and it paid off. That scene where the two of them were explaining the loss that they had all had, and then they realized that, oh yeah, they, you know, this is a common thing in all the universes. You know, when Andrew Garfield talks about Gwen, like you were saying, you feel that pain, and so we're reminded of that. And then when that iconic moment happens and you see her falling, and it's like, oh no, Tom Holland can't save her, and then
Yeah.
Andrew Garfield swoops in and he manages to save her, and then he's like holding back tears because he saves the girl this time.
Even just talking about it like kind of messes with me emotionally. It's
so good.
You know, because it was such a huge loss. God, it's like even just thinking about it just messes me up because he does such a good job at making it feel real.
Yes.
The dialogue between him and Zendaya or MJ is fun because like she throws the bread at him and he's like hanging on the ceiling. It's just the simple things. The way they wrote him in this feels different from The Amazing Spider-Man to some degree because he's a lot more like, I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for. I guess nerdy. Like he's just, I always wanted brothers. You know?
So excited that part where he was like, I love you guys.
Yeah.
And then they're both like, thank you.
Yeah, but I guess they needed to do that in order to really separate each character from one another. Like
right.
Tobey Maguire is more of the sage, older guy.
How did you feel about him being not aged down?
I liked that better.
I did too.
I preferred that because it gave him more of that, like, my favorite moment with him is when, why is it making me emotional just thinking about it? My favorite moment with him is when he stops Tom Holland from killing Green Goblin. There's something powerful about just his expression. It's like a lot, I'm going to be real with you guys. A lot of the movie, it felt like Tobey Maguire was phoning it in. It felt like he was just there. It's like, it felt like they paid him a lot of money to show up to a set he did not want to be on. Like, he really didn't want to be there, is what it felt like to me. But that moment when he is faced with Tom Holland, who's trying to kill Green Goblin, there's this expression in his eyes, and I'm like, God, this is powerful stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm projecting onto Tobey Maguire or if he really brought something. I feel like he brought something in his eyes in that moment that was so strong. It's like,
well, it was like a mixture of compassion and like, I don't know.
There's something about like shame also, I think.
Yeah, he's like, dude, don't do this.
Yeah.
I've been there and I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did.
Yeah.
So please listen to your older brother.
Yeah. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Like that scene when he stops him was one of my favorite moments. And of course, he gets stabbed. It's so unexpected.
What?
I thought it was unexpected. I don't know he was going to get stabbed.
I was freaking out in the movie theater because I saw him and I'm like, dude, what? No, you're going to get hurt. Right. You're exposed. And then when he got stabbed, I was like, well, I'm not surprised.
I forgot to talk about Marissa Tomei and her contribution to the film.
Oh, yeah.
I think for the most part, I liked her acting. There was one scene where I thought it was a little bit funky where she's like, he's losing his mind. He's not just lost here, he's lost in his mind. I thought the way she delivered that line, that was my only gripe where I was like, yeah, I don't like how you did that one. But everything else, that was me being persnickety.
Yeah.
Everything else she did in this film, I thought was solid. She's
a great actress.
I felt for her when, she got killed.
Oh my God. The moment she said the iconic line, I was like, oh, dude, that's a wrap.
Yeah.
You're gone. No one says that line and lives.
I thought that we needed that. We needed that death for Tom Holland's Peter Parker
to grow.
To grow as a person, to motivate him forward.
It's almost like that moment is the nexus point, right? It's like it's the point where you can't change that reality for Spider-Man. Like someone important to him always has to die, and that's always important in the Spider-Man story, regardless of which one you are.
Speaking of which, the ending touches me every single time when he basically has to decide that he's not going to keep MJ and Ned in his life anymore. It was like that. I'm glad that they took time with that scene in order to let you really feel the decision that Spider-Man is making, to let go of them. John Watts decidedly, had those lingering shots on his expression, on his thought process, on, am I gonna tell her? Am I gonna hold it in? And he decides not to tell her. He decides to let him go, and that's like the ultimate sacrifice because he doesn't want to lose any more people.
The turning point was when MJ pulls her hair off her head and he sees that she's still healing, and you see him and he's fine.
Well, she goes, it doesn't hurt anymore.
Yeah.
It was a very on-the-nose line. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But that's the thing. He was reminded that they are way more fragile than him. And so, you know, he can't always protect them.
From the first viewing, I got a little bit uncomfortable the moment when they started bringing all the bad guys into Happy Hogan's apartment.
Happy Hogan's apartment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, even the stuff in the, what's it called? Beneath the sanctum? Whatever it's called, that dungeon area. That's when the film started to slow down a little bit because it had this sort of momentum going.
It did, yeah.
And then it slowed down in that dungeon where all the villains are being kept a little bit. I still liked some of these beautiful shots, like when Spider-Man's going out to see Electro for the first time, and it's a very, very wide shot of him just going along the power lines. It's like, even in the cinema, I'm like, wow, this is gorgeous. But there's something in that section of the film that just felt like it felt slower, and it felt like it just didn't have the same momentum and energy of the rest of the movie.
Right.
And it took up a significant portion. The stuff with the lizard talking was fucking weird to me. I didn't like the line when he goes, that's not his girlfriend. That can't be his girlfriend. And
it felt a little bit out of character, I think. Like, sometimes I enjoyed the jokes, don't get me wrong. Like, I think I was laughing at pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
But it definitely felt that a lot of the time the jokes were just kind of ham-fisted in there.
Yes.
Just to, you know, keep it light, keep it moving. But yeah, sometimes it did kind of feel like, oh, that's not really what they would say.
Yeah, it was very shoehorned in.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The scene when he brings them into the apartment, on the first viewing, I felt my energy going, oh God, like, where are we going with this? It felt like long and not exciting for some reason. It was getting me frustrated on the first viewing. Then when Green Goblin, when Tom Holland has that moment where his spider sense is freaking out, he's like, oh God, that's when the film picks up again.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong though, like that section when Spider-Man is opposite of Doctor Strange and the whole world's flipping and whatnot, I love that scene. Again, one of my favorite moments. You're talking about favorite moments in the movie earlier. I forgot to mention that completely. Like, I love watching that where Doctor Strange pulls Spider-Man into the mirror dimension and everything's just turning on itself. It just looks bananas. I thought that moment when Tom Holland's shot out of his body, his arms automatically moving, I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
You know, when Doctor Strange is using the portals against him, like Spider-Man traps himself.
Yeah.
Even from the very beginning of that scene, I thought it was great where he tries to go away and he's brought right back to the Sanctum Sanctorum or whatever it's called, because Doctor Strange is just standing there like, come on, dude. Like I'm on Doctor Strange.
Who do you think you're fighting here?
All that stuff over the Grand Canyon I thought was just amazing. I wanted more of that.
That was cool.
And it's obviously a preview of things to come in, Doctor Strange into the
Multiverse of Madness.
I was gonna say Heart of Madness. Multiverse of Madness. That's why like the after credits thing was just like mind blowing for me, because I'm like, I can't wait for more of this craziness. Yeah, that psychedelic mushroom shit. So all that stuff where like the multiple trains and whatnot, the visual effects, the sequence there, the acting, I loved all of it.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite scenes in the film. That's the reason to buy the Blu-ray, is that scene alone and the stuff with all the Spider-Man together.
Yeah,
but
that's my favorite stuff.
So anyway, he brings them into the apartment and there's all this like trying to figure out like how to cure the bad guys and whatnot. And I get that it's important. It's needed for the plot to function. But then like after we get the Spider-Man, you're so bamboozled by what's going on in the movie with these guys. You're so happy that you don't think about the fact that this plot is actually very thin. There's not a lot going on in this movie. The story is very, very small.
Sure.
It's like, okay, so we got to cure the bad guys. That doesn't work out. Okay, bring in the other Spider-Man. Like, and then the final action sequence. If you think about it, it's like a 3-step thing to the end of the movie. There's not a lot happening.
Yeah.
And so while we're spending time with all the Spider-Men who are trying to figure out the cure and like having this fun dialogue and whatnot, I'm wondering, what the hell are the bad guys doing? It's like there's no news reports of anything going wrong in the city. Yeah,
it's like, what's going on? What is the time dilation here? Like, how long is it taking them to make these cures? It seems like it's going by really quickly, right? If these villains have so much power now and they can create so much havoc, like, why aren't you doing that?
Yeah, it's like they're living their best life. Yeah. Not hurting anybody.
Yeah, what are you doing? Like having a pizza in New York City? Like, what's going on?
From the first viewing, I did wonder, like, where were they the whole time? And why did Green Goblin not show up until the end of the action sequence?
Yeah, he was hiding. He was chilling.
And then the fight scene between him and Peter Parker, like, conceptually, I thought it was so cool to see the newest Spider-Man fight the first bad guy.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
I thought that was super cool.
Yeah.
Right? Just conceptually. But then the choreography, the way it's shot, I'm like, okay, emotionally, I'm still invested in this, so it's fine. But there were moments in the fight scene that frustrated me. Like, there's a moment where Peter Parker, like, flips over Green Goblin and slams him down.
Yeah.
And in the second viewing, which was like with the proper audience, they liked that moment. But I watched it 3 times, like I said, and every single time I'm like, that's a little slow. Something feels a little weird about that moment that lacks momentum in him slamming him down.
Well, for me,
it's wire work.
Yeah, I thought it looked cool conceptually. It's a really cool idea, but also I was like, it feels like as a move, you have to really, there is no momentum to kind of lift him into that flip. I didn't quite like superly buy it.
Yeah, well, it's because of the way it was shot.
But also, I just read that Willem Dafoe, one of the conditions for coming back to this was he wanted to do his own stunts as a 66-year-old man.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's something.
A lot of those fight scenes between Peter Parker and Green Goblin were very visceral. They felt visceral.
Yeah, I mean, you had those moments where Tom Holland was punching him and stuff, and like that was, the simple stuff worked. It's that when they got into the intricacies of the choreography, I was sort of like trying to keep up with it all, and I was getting confused. I'm like, okay, so wait, he shot his leg here with this web. He's punching him here. Like, there were things that felt like misses, but just because it's cutting so fast, you're bamboozled into thinking that it actually worked when it didn't.
Right.
You know, and so that ending fight scene, it was just very problematic for me. I'm like, okay, having seen so many Marvel things, including Daredevil, I always go back to that, or Shang-Chi, it's like you have the resources to do this right. So why are you shooting this like a Bourne Identity movie?
Yeah.
No need to cover it like that, and yet they did. So emotionally, that worked for me. Emotionally, the film got me, even though it's structurally not great. There were so many good emotional moments in the movie that it's like, okay, well, who cares? You know, it's fine.
It's fun. This movie was entertaining AF.
Yeah, it was definitely entertaining. I just don't know if that, like, let's say you're a kid watching this 20 years from now. Is it still going to be entertaining? I feel like the Amazing Spider-Man movies will be more entertaining for kids 20 years from now than this one. It's like, if you don't have the legacy that you grew up with, you know, the nostalgia of Tobey Maguire, of watching Andrew Garfield, like, this movie is not going to have as much meaning to you, right? Let's say this is the first one you watched. Like, this is, you walked in on this one, right?
Yeah.
And then you went back and watched the other ones. I feel like the other ones will resonate with you more.
No, 100%. Like, I do know a friend of mine is going to watch this movie for the first time with her boyfriend. Her boyfriend's taking her.
Yeah.
But she hasn't really been following the MCU and Spider-Man and stuff. And I'm like, wow, she's going to have a very different experience than the rest of us.
I'd be very curious to hear her opinion on that, because
I
I feel like it's just not going to resonate with you as deep. You have no reason to get excited when Andrew Garfield shows up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, what? You know?
It's like, oh, that's cool. There's another Spider-Man. And why is everybody cheering?
Right. Now, so if you took all that nostalgia out of it, I feel like the movie would feel a lot slower. That's all I'm trying to get at.
Potentially.
You know what I mean? I guess my one other complaint is that outside of Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina, I don't know that I've really connected with any of the other bad guys. It's like Electro was funny, but the lizard guy was just there. Sandman was just there, you know?
Yeah, and that was always going to be difficult because of the sheer number of villains.
I think that the reason, you know, kind of doubling back on something I said earlier, I think that the reason why the plot was so simple was because there's so much in this movie.
Yeah.
That's the only sense I can make of this. Like, if you have so many villains and so many protagonists in the movie, how do you do this without it completely falling apart? And the fact that this movie worked even remotely is amazing. That's astounding that this even worked at all, because of how many villains you have and how many heroes you have. But each time I watch it, I still feel a major disconnect with the lizard guy. I don't know his name.
He's just the lizard.
Okay, the lizard. I still feel a major disconnect with him. He's just there. I didn't understand why Sandman went completely bad, because he was sort of on the fence. It's like, I just want to go home. What was the discussion y'all had before you showed up at the Statue of Liberty? Because clearly Electro is on a different, path than you. He's like, got bad news for you. We're not going anywhere. This is where we at. I'm like, okay. What's Sandman doing then?
Yeah,
like,
you literally said you have a daughter you want to go home to. Like, how is that not important anymore?
Yeah, there was a major disconnect there that didn't make any sense, because there's that moment when Willem Dafoe is like, we don't have to give up these things. We're gods. Gods don't choose, or gods choose. They don't. Something, I forgot what Willem Dafoe's line was in Happy Hogan's apartment. But then you see this look on Sandman, who, by the way, was my least favorite visual effects in the movie. Like, he looked the most janky to me.
Okay.
You know, like, there were moments where all the sand effects look cool.
Yeah.
But when he's talking, I'm like, I don't remember it looking this, like, low rent in the original Spider-Man that he showed up in. But anyway, that's just a nitpick. The more important thing is the story thing, which is Willem Dafoe has his little monologue that basically shifts all the villains in his favor, right? Except for
Doc Ock.
Doc Ock, who disappears for most of the movie.
And then comes back and saves the day, and Electro isn't like flummoxed, or he's not questioning it at all. Like, so because he turned good, then he comes back and he's all like, you know, holding on to Spider-Man and whatnot. And then it's like, yeah, you're on my side again. It's like, no, just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Right.
You know, but whatever.
Anyway, yeah, that's another weird thing that I thought about after the second viewing. I'm like, why is he just letting him? But whatever. Emotionally, it worked because you thought he was a bad guy again.
Yeah. The way they handled it was probably the best way, which is to just focus on two of the main villains. So you have Doc Ock's arc, where he goes from being a bad guy and he goes back to being the kind Dr. Otto Octavius.
Yeah.
And then also Green Goblin's arc, right? Where he comes back to himself. And those are the two that we really care about. And the other ones were kind of like, yeah, you're just there. It's cool.
Yeah, well, it felt like cannon fodder.
A little bit, yeah.
You know? It serves as more of a distraction for me than a compliment to the film. He's just there. He literally is just there. And then there's that moment where he says, I told you there'd be consequences.
Oh, the lizard,
The lizard, he says, and then he tosses Tom Holland back into the building. That sequence was a little weird. Even though I thought the action there was neat, you know, the fighting between Tom Holland and Willem Dafoe was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it felt visceral. And I felt like that fight actually better than the ending fight.
Yeah.
There was something about it that felt more raw. But then when the lizard tosses him back in, I'm like, this is literally just to keep him in the movie.
Well, yeah, because like I never really understood his motivation.
There was none.
There didn't seem to be.
Yeah.
Unless it was just like, I'm cool just being a lizard. Please don't mess with me. I'm living my best life over here.
The leaves that got captured in the Sanctum Sanctorum had more personality than the lizard did. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
I didn't feel anything with this guy. Overall, having watched it 3 times, I'm like, even though I don't like these things, that all the stuff that the aforementioned complaints, I still enjoy those nostalgic moments a lot. I still really enjoy Andrew Garfield a lot. There's still a lot of great action sequences, especially, you know, Doctor Strange and Spider-Man fighting each other. I love the moment when he comes out of the fight and he's like, I just beat Doctor Strange in a fight. Like,
yeah.
You know, like I think that all that stuff is really fun. Ned, I think, is likable as always. You know, him discovering his powers and summoning the Spider-Man into his universe. I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, the Spider-Man were already there. Like,
I'm
just
so
to
confused about like what the hell happened there. Like the movie just says it, and I'm like, okay, fine, I don't care. Like, I just want them here. I don't.
Well, yeah, because they were. Yeah, actually, now that I'm trying to explain it, I'm like, wait, hold on.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
How did they know that Tom Holland is Peter Parker?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
They're there.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
That's all we wanted.
It's like I didn't care about the excuse. I didn't need it to make sense. I just wanted them to show up.
Yeah.
And then you have that moment in the first after credit scene with Tom Hardy, and I walked out of that going, I don't get it.
And then I tried to explain it to you because I thought I got it, and then same thing happened. I was like,
it doesn't make any sense.
Actually, it doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah, like, why did he disappear? Like, it's not like...
Well, why was
did he show
even
up?
there?
Yeah, why did he show up? Why did he disappear? That didn't make any sense.
It was a fun scene, though.
It was a fun scene, but I'm like, it's kind of hurting my head a little bit. And that takes me back to the Doctor Strange, trailer at the end of the movie. Like, I was very happy that's what they showed us because I am so looking forward to that film. Like... More than No Way Home, I've been looking forward to that.
I know, but Doctor Strange is your favorite, though. Yeah,
like just the little things they were showing us, and then that moment when they show evil Doctor Strange, I'm like, oh my god, I cannot wait for this. I cannot wait for whatever this movie is. I cannot wait for it. The set pieces, the fact that it's Sam Raimi, like. It's just, I cannot wait for it. I think we covered everything to ad nauseum, and we'll talk about anything we didn't cover with you guys in the live stream. So again, keep a lookout for that.
Can't wait to connect with you all and talk about this film some more.
So you guys, thanks so much for hanging out. I'm Jaby Koay. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.